Greetings, fellow tarot travelers. Tripping through the tetrahedral triptych of cards I shall lay before you. I'm Tarot Torch. And now it's time to look into Sudan. On April 11th, Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir stepped down after months of protests, according to government sources. So he's basically given up his presidency. And that's because the protesters, oh my gosh, they went through months of tear gas and live ammunition and mass arrests and death squads, and still they showed up in front of all the police stations and military headquarters and government headquarters and demanded a change. The protesters say the past 30 years have been riddled with corruption, bad decision-making, and a lack of accountability. And finally, the Sudanese president, al-Bashir, stepped down. The armed forces then walked in and seized power in a coup d'etat and claimed to hold no desire to hold the reins of political power. They claim to be the brokers of change, and they will serve as a transitional government and have civilian elections soon in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, or at least that's what they're inferring. But the military says it will subordinate the remaining protests and has imposed a curfew for 3 months, even though marching protesters are still on the street. Meanwhile, the protesters are now focalizing their protest on the military headquarters in Khartoum and other headquarters sites around the country. Although the military council could step down soon, the people do not want this military in charge even for a short while. They consider it as part of al-Bashir's corruption. They don't want his military cronies. They don't want his old regime cronies. They don't want these people to have any power at all. And are you ready for this? The head of the military junta is reported to be wanted for international crimes in the ethnic cleansing of Rwanda. So we're dealing with a very serious situation here. And so we're going to ask cards that are acclimated to Muslim culture because the majority of religion in Sudan is Muslim, and al-Bashir, as you can tell, is a Muslim name. And so this is the Tarot de Marrakech, and it is a Muslim deck made by Italians, and the title is French. And that is because Muslims will not put human figures in art. So tarot decks are by definition not a Muslim tool. And I've known Muslims who have gone to tarot readers but won't look at the cards. They let the tarot reader read the cards, but they will not own a tarot deck nor even look at the cards when they're being read. And so here we have a deck that's dedicated to Marrakesh, and so the characters are largely Arabic or perhaps Anglo-looking in demeanor, whereas in Sudan, the people are black in general. And so there is a little confusion here, but I don't have a black African Muslim deck, and this is the only Muslim deck I have, and so I use it for all Muslim countries. And it seems to work, and we just want to know what's going on in Sudan with the news blackout and the arrest of all their reporters and everything else that's gone on, the closure of websites and of social media. I mean, it's such a clampdown, we can't find out the truth. We do know al-Bashir stepped down, and that's all we know, and that's not much to go with. So we'll put the cards to the side and start with this top card. And the first one is the 5 of mandalas. Now, the mandalas are the coins in a Tarot de Marseille or Rider-Waite-Smith or Thoth deck. So in Tarot de Marseille, the 5 of coins represents sort of an upset, something that changes everything. It's not necessarily like Rider-Waite-Smith, where you see, bad financial situation, a downturn. It doesn't mean that. It means that the status quo of secure savings is broken through. And it's in this breaking process that, yes, it's possible to go into financial ruin, but it's possible for financial expansion as well. It's a time of disruption. The second card is the Trois de Feu, the Three of Fire, and that fire is the Wands suit in this deck. So that's the Three of Wands. Now, in the Tarot de Marseille, the Three of Wands represents having made a choice for a path to be taken. And there's still time to change the path, but the path has been chosen. And if no change is made soon, that path is going to be cast into cement. And the final card in the outcome is the Six de Terrière, the Six of Urns. And the Six of Urns is the Six of Cups in the Tarot de Marseille and the Rider-Waite-Smith and the Thoth system. And it represents in Tarot de Marseille a marriage. And it represents other things in other decks, but we're going to go with the Tarot de Marseille at this time. So of these three cards, what we have is a disruption, which is the disruption of the old order at making money as they have been for the old regime. There's a disruption. That's all they're viewing it as an inconvenience. And where we're at now is that a path has been decided for that country. It may not be the path that the old regime wants, and it may not be the path that the people want, but something has been decided, probably behind closed doors. And they'll probably have some leader. I mean, it's doubtful it would be a woman leader, but it could be just to appease the masses. But my guess is this disruption, because it's only viewed as a disruption, and these are all lower arcana cards going from 5 to 3 to 6, meaning that it's going from the past, which was bad, to the present, which is worse, to the future, which is only 6 above 5. It's not that much higher. It's not that big of a step forward. It's not that much of an evolution. So it looks like the old regime is still going to be writing the script here, even if they got a progressive woman leader, which is unlikely in an Arab country. And the reason why I bring up the idea of a woman is here we have the cups, which is a feminine suit in the future. Now, I think that the present is still filled with fire. There's still a lot of arrests, there's a lot of protests, there's a lot of grudges, there's a lot of possible assassinations, there's probably money fleeing the country, there's all kinds of things going on. So let's find out what this fire really is about. We have the Three of Scimitars, which is the Trois de Cimeterre, which is the Three of Swords in the Rider-Waite system, and the Trois d'Épée in the Marseille Tarot. And that represents many things. But it represents victory in the Marseille Tarot. And I think that's an important concept. It can also represent pledges and vows, as far as I'm concerned, from my understanding. So, we have the unnamed higher arcana, the first higher arcana. And it's the unnamed arcana, the death card. Well, that says a lot, folks. I mean, everything's lower arcana. Everything's just, the plebiscite. And here's the motion from the heavens, something predetermined, not by governments, but by the court of the moon and the stars. And here we see that it is the death card. So this means that there's a victory for death present in this 3 of fire. So evidently, certain assassinations are being carried out as we speak against political adversaries, against economic adversaries, against people who are withholding funds, with people are being executed who are escaping with funds. The reason why, this is going to be a path that's forged in blood. That's what the death card speaks of, that there's a victory present for the protesters, and there's a victory present for the military, but there's death at hand. There's some kind of death at hand. Maybe al-Bashir had hidden some of those missing chemical weapons and bioweapons that escaped from Iraq. We know that those weapons of mass destruction did exist. Rumsfeld sold them to Iraq. How foolish is that? But they never turned up. Everybody keeps that kind of quiet. They all want to pretend they didn't exist. I think they were hoping to find them in Syria. But a really good place to hide them would have been Sudan. And maybe that'll be the parting gift from al-Bashir. But when this death card shows up, it doesn't mean physical death, but it can mean physical death. Usually it means a Shivite type restriction on diet, on lifestyle, minimalization, cutting back, losing the fat, losing the weight, giving up the unnecessary possessions, paring down to a more lean and mean machine. And so it could be with this victory that the government will cut to the chase, and the path that's being chosen is going to be expedited and is going to be quickened with the military. And they may get a really good constitutional shift and a shift of leadership as well, and streamline into a really progressive and positive government. That is always a possibility with this configuration, but we won't know whether it's good or bad, because this is only the present, until we look at the future. And the 6 of urns, it's marriage, but it is ominous that it's 6 urns. And if we're dealing with militarized biotoxic weapons of mass destruction, 6 urns could mean that he has, 6 vials, 6 suitcases of vials, 6 containers of vials. And if it's the paring down of a government for expedited action on behalf of the military, then this could mean that there'll be 6 advisors. There's all kinds of ways these things can be interpreted. So let's get clarification. And we get la présence, being. And this is the card that is so precious. It's not really judgment, it's beingness. Because in Islamic culture, they don't have the Christian ideal of judgment. There's paradise and it's guaranteed to a good Muslim who practices. They may not get the 42 virgins, that's for a special group of them, but for them, the presence of being as a Muslim is the paradisal beginning and offering. And this is the action of judgment is in being a good Muslim. And then from this existential card, the next one is the 5 of fire, which is overcoming. Overcoming, being, and death. That's pretty ominous on some levels. Let's put these 2 to the side like this so that we have the 6 still showing, and we can make a minor cross here and turn 1 more for the future. And it's the 10 of fire. We're dealing with a lot of fire here, and you can see here the human sacrifice to the fire. This isn't good. This is not good at all. My guess is there's going to be, from the military, a crackdown, a purge, and ethnic cleansing. The head of the military was in charge of the ethnic cleansing of Rwanda. And so he seized power. And this is why they don't want him in power. It looks like he considers this a victory, and he intends to purge the people. Now, the Ten of Wands in Rider-Waite-Smith, is the carrying of the final burden. And almost like the Stations of the Cross for the Christians. And the Ten of Wands in Tarot de Marseille is loyalty. But these cards here speak specifically of a human being burnt. I mean, you can't miss that, can you? And, in Muslim culture, in Islamic culture, when they go crazy and purge and kill and execute, they do some really basically scary fundamentalist stuff like crucifixions, stonings, and igniting people on fire is not beyond their reach and grasp. I must say the cards don't look good right now for Sudan. And the only hope, I think, in these interpretations would be that the fire, remember there's the 3 of fire here, and the 10 of fire, and the 5 of fires, that the fires represent the protesters. And the protesters have chosen the path that the government's going to be changing. And the protesters are overcoming all odds, including the military. And the protesters, by putting on their lives on the line, have established a sense of inter-protester loyalty to each other and have gained the loyalty of the military. And the death card could be death to the old regime. And that could be the true victory. And that's why the presence of being is here. That what we could really have is a successful revolution that has a peaceful transition into a new civilian government, and the military junta is deposed by the protesters. Well, I think we see the two sides clearly. The protest is still going on, and more than ever, the protesters need to unite and go all the way, even into complete martyrdom. And they must stand and overthrow the military junta. Those that are in charge of the military junta are far too frightening and have far too frightening of plans of what they would do if the victory is theirs. Remember, the victory card is here, but it's not established who gets that victory. And this could be death of the people, but it could be death of the military junta. And nobody has to die. So now let's remove these cards and get back to our original reading. Oh, how different this is. How much more simple and peaceful and basic this is. And how much more truthful it might be to the actual circumstances being faced in Sudan. So let us contemplate it this way, that there's been an economic disruption, a path has been chosen, and the alliances have been forged. And that now it is simply a process to unfold and to occur. And that decisions have been made, that the junta will step down, and perhaps the new leading figurehead has been selected. Like I said, a woman might be a great choice, because that would create the image of absolute change. Arab countries never permit a woman to run government. Well, I don't want to say never, but very, very rarely, if at all. And wouldn't that be the kind of change the people would embrace, feeling that somehow the old regime was thwarted? And whether the old regime is thwarted or is simply allied with the new regime, at least there would be peace among the people. And peace among the people is so much better than a purge.